Ja, ich gratuliere auch noch einmal und following the AICA Award ceremony, we would like to pay tribute to Walter Vitt, who unfortunately cannot be with us today. Not only was he the president of AICA Germany for quite some terms, above all, he has published a series of booklets on art criticism. You see them here for many years. Henry Meyric Hughes from Ireland will honor his friend, and he will then throw I will then throw an art critical glance on Walter Vitt's art critical library. Henry.
Well, I was going to say it's very difficult, it's impossible to follow such a wonderful talk, and laudatio as well. It does, I have to say, make me even more nostalgic than I was going to be from the beginning. I remember exactly the same exhibition in 1969 of the collection that Ludwig had, and some of the disputes. And I'm going to speak very briefly, because I've only been given 5 minutes, quite rightly, just to say a few words about our colleague Walter Vitt, who has been a loyal supporter of AICA, and indeed of everything that he has done for very many years. I think he was something like, I will look it up, 19 years as AICA's president, and guided it through all sorts of changes, including the unification between the two halves of Germany, with a certain amount of tact and discretion as was needed. And he spent 27 years as an editor with WDR, Westdeutscher Rundfunk, in Cologne. And some of our paths only crossed, I think, perhaps 20 years ago, but they, anecdotally, we had quite a lot of factors in common. I think I went to the second Cologne Art Fair, which I'm sure that Graskamp has written about. I can't remember now. And we have certain friends in common, two friends of mine from Berlin days. Graskamp will also know, probably from disputes in Munich, with Gerd Wenner and Ingemar Reuter, who died sadly young. I'd just like to say 3 things, really, about Walter and his career that sets him apart from many of his colleagues today. And one is that he had no formal training as an art historian, and he came to maturity, if you like, in a very, very different environment from that which we experience today. It was that of the Bonn government, of course. And he was, in the best sense of the word, a regional critic. And it was a time that was an extremely exciting one for Europe. The Rhineland, as we were hearing from Walter Graskamp, indeed, was the sort of gateway, I suppose, to modern art, and what was happening in America, and to a lesser extent in Britain. It had the art market, it had Peter Ludwig. I remember seeing in Berlin, because that's where my work took me, an exhibition of minimal art from the States in 1969 already in the Rhineland. And there was this intense rivalry between Cologne and Düsseldorf, and of course it was a rich piece of ground, if you like. Klaus Honneff, for instance, was who is well known to many of you here, was for a while in Aachen and staged the crucial exhibition of Fluxus in 1964 in Aachen. There were people like Georg Japper, who was known to many of you here. There were museum directors like Paul Wember in Krefeld, Johannes Kladders in Mönchengladbach. So it was a very rich field here, and someone who played a crucial role in that was Walter Vitt. in a new medium. There were many people living from newspapers, which is no longer possible, and from periodicals. That's also vanished epoch. But he was also a radio broadcaster, and he started actually as a political editor. He didn't start as an art critic or anything of that kind. Working in a new medium, it was the pioneer, WDR in Cologne and NDR perhaps in North Germany, which was trying to bring art close to ordinary people and to their lives in a way that was absolutely unprecedented. As I say, it's a world that's vanished. The traces of that were swept away in 1989. I just want to add two things. Yesterday afternoon, I had the privilege of spending the afternoon with Walter Vitt. And very characteristically, he's a man of great modesty and of considerable age. He's an older generation, of course, than Walter, and half a generation older than me even. He took me to see two things. One is the memorial which he created to the book burnings in 1933, in May 1933 in Cologne, which is in front of the old cathedral building. And that was, and there he had, I think, a very intelligent way. There was no kind of memory, no popular memory of the book burnings in Cologne. Everyone knows because of the Berlin Memorial of Berlin, but there were book burnings in the university over the whole of Germany. And when he proposed it to the municipality which owned the land in front of the university, they agreed with enthusiasm. His concept, I think, was a very fine one, which was that he would do every 2 years, over a period of 20 years, the project is now finished, he would commission some 15 or 20 stonemasons who would compete in the end for the honor of working on this project, to incise the names in stone of artists whose works, writers, whose works had been burnt in front of the university. Walter Dex, or Bertolt Brecht, Franz Kafka, and so on, Max Brod, even at least one foreigner, Ernest Hemingway. And so if you ever go there now, and it's quite near to here, and you walk in front of the entrance to the TH, as it is now, the Technische Hochschule, you will see the work that Walter carried out over a period of 20 years. Each time there was a presentation of the writer's work in the evening, and it was training young stonemasons. It was introducing a new and a young generation to something that deserved to be remembered. And the second thing I was going to say was that he took me to the Friedhof Melaten, which is, of course, Malaten. It goes back, the cemetery outside the city walls, goes back to the time of Napoleon. And with a beautiful avenue, well, several beautiful avenues of trees, such as you find in the Giardini in Venice, planted around the same time, plane trees, where he has made two graves. He has two grave positions, one next to the other. One is to the poet, the Dada poet, Johannes Baader, and he discovered 3 poems, rather scurrilous erotic poems, I think in the 1980s, from 1922, that he had sent to be published in a magazine by Tristan Tzara, and they were never published. Not much remains of Johannes Baader, but these 3 erotic poems, which are very rich in layers of meaning, were discovered by Walter, and he interpreted their meanings very cleverly and wittily, I think. And he also commissioned a gravestone at the head of that by Wolfgang Nestler, the Reindl sculptor. And next to that, touchingly, is the gravestone which he made for his wife and for himself eventually. So it's a double grave, and apparently if someone dies without relatives, you could join the two, but he hasn't done that, but he wishes to lie with his wife next door. And he looks after the project, the TH, and he looks after the graves in Melaten Cemetery. But that's perhaps not the right note to end on, because we're going to pass now, which is going to talk about this extraordinary series of critical writings, showing great persistence and great imagination and talent. I would just like to salute Walter for that. Thank you.
So you see Walter Vitt's Art Critical Library. It's a unique institution in the AICA world, I could say. I've brought it for you if you would like to take a look at it afterwards. Only in general will I be able to comment on the handy 28 volumes, the Schriften zur Kunstkritik, published by Walter Vitt since 1993, annually, sometimes even twice a year. He asked all authors, whether radio journalists or art writers, for texts that did not deal with modern art or contemporary artists, but with special cases of art criticism. He was concerned with the history of art criticism, with art critical debates in daily newspapers, as said before, and art magazines in various countries such as Italy and France. Some volumes reflect the critical reception of art movements, such as Bauhaus, celebrated this year, or large-scale exhibitions, such as the polarizing documenta by Katrin David. The editor, Walter Vitt himself, presented his plea, Wider die Schlampigkeiten in Kunstpublikationen, against sloppiness in art publications, in volume 13 in 2003. In 1993, he dedicated the premiere of the Kunstkritische Bibliothek to the subject of center and periphery on the occasion of a lecture by a Russian colleague in Vienna. At that time, Walter Vitt did not have a plan for a series at all. He wanted, quote, to get involved with topics that deal with history or the present, and therefore present artists in the focus of criticism, unquote, which should serve, quote, as examples for young AICA members, unquote, in order to train them, as Walter Vitt says. After he had founded the series, there were sponsors to help financing the publication, but after the financial crisis, Walter Vitt increasingly had to put in his own money, at least as far as the sales did not cover the printing costs. At this point, I would like to emphasize that AICA Germany is grateful to the editor of the Schriften zur Kunstkritik for his commitment over so many years. And I would like to wish him that this beautiful tradition can be continued by German AICA, perhaps with a larger number of female authors, above all with a comparable idealism. Thank you. So, before we come to the closing words of this evening, I would like to briefly mention the supporting events for the Rhineland kickoff. For all those who have experienced the visit of Columba, the excursion to the Bauhaus Villas in Krefeld, or to K21 in Düsseldorf, or just here in the Museum Ludwig, the little tour through transcorporeality, might like to join tomorrow morning's gallery walk through some galleries in the Belgian Quarter. Of course, you are more than welcome to the epilogue of the Congress opening days in Cologne at the KHM tomorrow evening. Now, before Duke Bursma, Rotterdam, Cologne, Vanja Smiljanic, Cologne, will perform the closing word, I'd like to say goodbye and thank all those who helped getting the Rhineland Congress to a good kickoff. Among many others, the students of the University of Cologne and the Kunsthochschule für Medien, and last but not least, all technicians of the Museum Ludwig and KHM. Where is he? All that remains for me is to wish you a very nice evening, in addition to the symbolic image by Jürgen Stollanz I mentioned before in the foyer. You will find also some snacks and drinks. So here you go, Vanja and Duke, with your lecture performance. I don't think you're ready for this jelly.